What do you know? It's another Tuesday night live stream. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining tonight. Tonight will be, again, one of those kind of fun, lighthearted live streams and more of a chat whiskey, maybe get some more exposure for Tom and his channel. And really more than just that is to have fun. We'll talk a little bit of whiskey, maybe a few things that we've been maybe excited to try, maybe disappointed, maybe so far here in 2024. Admittedly, it's been kind of for me, a slow start buying wise anyway. And again, in all honesty, I find myself buying less and less whiskey just with everything that we do with the club and all of that. So it makes it a little bit more difficult buying stuff. But wanted to let me say hi to a couple people that were in here kind of early on. Of course, Top Dog, good to see you, buddy. Sugar Kitty, Roy R. Does Cocktails, good to see you, bud. Dougie, good to see you, buddy. Mr. Richie Z, always good to see you. Hophead, good to see you. Mr. Benjamin, good to see you, buddy. I know people will kind of pop in here. Greggy D, good to see you, buddy. And Peter B, so far. I know a few people will kind of pop in here in a second, so get some things going. But yeah, and then while we're kind of going through a few things, Tom and I will talk a little bit about, again, the goods and maybe bad so far of whiskey here in 2024. But the other thing is I want to hear from you guys as well in the chat tonight. Let me know, whether there's something that you've been impressed with, disappointed in, and all of that. So without further ado, let's bring the man of the hour on. We'll kind of get the party started. So what's up, buddy? How you doing?
How we doing, Scott?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thanks for joining. I know it was a quick kind of thing today. I usually with these Tuesday night live streams, unless I've got some other big thing planned, I take it right up to the last minute every Tuesday, trying to figure out what in the world I'm going to do. And you kind of bailed me out, so I appreciate you bailing me out and being available. So thanks for joining tonight. So let's kind of do this a little bit. So like we were kind of chatting about before offline, I'm again always kind of fascinated as to the hows and whys of people within the kind of whiskey industry and whiskey channels. How did for you kind of getting into whiskey kind of start, and maybe how far back are we kind of going with your journey, so to speak?
It's a good question. I'll tell you this. Probably from 2000 to 2015, I was a huge beer nerd. The craft beer scene here in Michigan's pretty intense, a lot of options, and just in different groups that I joined through Facebook and other platforms. I met a lot of cool people, went on some trips, did a lot of fun things. And after a while, maybe I just kind of got a little bit tired of not the people, obviously, or the doing things. It's just, I think as you get older, beer is if you consume a lot of it, your body kind of changes a little bit. I put on a lot of weight, and it just, if I would go to drink a beer, I would just get really bloated. And so, I kind of started getting into whiskey a little bit. Interestingly enough, I wasn't a huge bourbon fan at first. I really got into Scotch for a few years. I found that a lot of the bourbons that people would put me onto to try, they would just be a little bit too strong for my palate.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of gravitated more into Scotch, where most of the popular products are around 80, 90. Maybe they touch that 100 proof point, but that's what really got me into whiskey is Scotch. And as your palate kind of evolves a little bit, you build up a little more tolerance and a taste for the higher proof. And that's kind of when I got really into bourbon, because there's really no comparison, in my opinion, as far as high proof, full flavor bourbon versus 90 proof Scotch. It's just a different animal.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And I would say probably for me as well, just because it was the a more natural thing. Like beer was more, I don't want to say like readily available. It was just simpler, right? It was just kind of an easier thing to gravitate towards. And again, all the barrel aged beers and things along those lines, but just regular stuff. And again, that beer craze was ridiculous for a while, and kind of hunting down a lot of that. And I kind of went through a little bit of that as well. But I would say I had a very, very similar experience with beer as well. And it still kind of applies now, is that it's almost a very difficult thing to drink because of what it does to you. And, you don't think about that when you're maybe a little bit younger. It doesn't affect you as much, but yeah, beer for whatever reason does the same thing. So having much of that is kind of a difficult thing for me these days. And honestly, I mean, I still enjoy it, but I enjoy just kind of sitting down and taking my time a little bit more with, whatever, bourbon, rye. I didn't start out with scotch at all. I knew very early on that was not my thing. Like I just knew like right away that barley, was just not something that I enjoyed. But yeah, I get it. And but that's really kind of the fun part of learning, I think, what it is you kind of enjoy about both. Like you'd mentioned with scotch, kind of maybe some lower proofs, oftentimes things with more sherries along those lines. But I've always felt like maybe similar to you, was it felt simpler once you got into a little bit more of the bourbon. There felt like there was more character for me anyway. Now there's a lot of people that would probably argue with both you and I about that. But again, there was something about bourbon that just really kind of resonated. And maybe it was that little bit of extra sweetness that was there. But yeah, I fully understand where you're kind of coming from with that. So
and I think you kind of hit a good point there. It was definitely the barrel aged stouts that we used to gravitate towards too. And learning a little bit more about those, what barrels were they aged in, where did they come from, and then wow, I really like that was aged in a Willet barrel, or this was
yeah,
aged in a Buffalo Trace barrel, and then kind of hits you like, well, why don't I just try Buffalo Trace? Why do I need
right.
this thick
Yeah.
motor stout?
Yeah, I
Um,
think again, I think that's a natural thing, because if there were people that were enjoying the barrel age or whiskey influenced beers, well, maybe the natural reaction would be like, well, okay, I understand this is whiskey, but what does that maybe taste like, with just without it being influenced by beer? What does it just taste like, on its own? And I think probably there have been a lot of people who've made that transition to maybe enjoying both, or maybe one more than the other now. But yeah, it's kind of a common thing. You'd see all the different barrels throughout the breweries and all of that. And I think it just became kind of a natural thing to maybe want to kind of try. So all right. I knew Stacy would probably argue there's going to be someone who's got the affinity to another thing. And again, when I did the blind with Stacy, oh geez, maybe a few weeks ago or so, uh, I've always kind of appreciated what I've tried with some Irish whiskey, especially some of the cast strength ones, and some of the ones that she gave me were absolutely fantastic. So I would, even though I hate to lump like Scotch in with Irish whiskey, because I enjoy Irish whiskey far more than I do Scotch. But there's something about that I really could kind of, I don't want to say tolerate, but enjoyed significantly more. So
Hey, I will say this, I don't drink a lot of Irish whiskey, but the first whiskey that I was actually, comfortable drinking neat and that I actually finished a bottle of was Bushmills.
oh
I think I picked it up one St. Patrick's Day. It was a cheap bottle. Figured I'd try an Irish whiskey, and I liked it. It's kind of it's probably my gateway.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of those for the I hopefully I don't offend Stacy by saying this, but it seems simpler while being more complex, if that makes any sense. Like it feels it feels that I'm probably going to offend Scotch people. Apparently I am totally being a jerk tonight. So I'm
Keeping with
I
the
think
theme.
there's just something about Irish whiskey that fits, I think, my palate more than what Scotch feels like. And again, I don't know necessarily why that is, and it should be through some of the distillation and all of that. But I enjoy it significantly more than I do Scotch. But whatever, to each their own. Enjoy whatever you want. But let me ask you this: so once you kind of got into dabbling with the bourbons, what was it early on that kind of made you think I think I can maybe kind of get behind this? I'm really enjoying this just on its own.
Um, I think, going back to, well, what would I do on a Friday or a Saturday night? If I'm
Mhm,
hanging out with my buddies, am I going to knock back 4 beers and, feel completely bloated and
mhm.
probably crappy the next morning? Or we would have some of these bottle shares, Scott, where we would, get together and have like 8 or 10 or 12 different barrel aged stouts, and we would, split them all and get through them. And it's really just the bloat. And then, maybe like a weekend after that or something, I would say, well, geez, maybe I'll just take it easy and maybe have a couple of pours of, scotch or a bourbon. And,
Mhm.
I'm enjoying myself just as much. I'm not putting on all the calories. I'm kind of getting a taste for, what is in these and what speaks to me, what notes do I pull out, and it just kind of piqued my interest. Um, but I think it was born out of just fatigue and finding something else that I maybe just enjoyed a little bit more.
Was there a particular bourbon that was kind of the early thing for you that you kind of remember being, one of the ones that were kind of made you think, I think I can maybe get behind this a little bit?
Early on, I would say like Buffalo Trace, Maker's Mark, your typical gateways.
Yeah.
I do remember some Elijah Craig small batch store picks that I really liked. Um, and then, a lot of scotch.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, and again, I don't think there's anything wrong with either one. I mean, it's just it's probably more of an expanded palette than what it is that I have. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I,
mean,
I, I think they say scotch is what the delicate spirit, and
yeah,
in that capacity, it's a good way to kind of cut your teeth on whiskey, I think, because
yeah,
you're going to find that there's a ton of different finishes, a ton of different things that go into different scotches.
yeah,
Your sherry cask, your bourbon cask, all kinds of stuff. The Islas are crazy. So there's just a
yeah,
lot to dabble into.
yeah,
And then I think once you kind of got your bearings and you want to try something a little bit different, that's when I got into higher proof bourbon.
yeah.
And since then, it's well, I mean, I'm trying to think back what kind of really suckered me in, and it was probably like maybe like a Jack Daniel's single barrel proof.
Mm.
Um, that one comes to mind. Geez, my memory's a little fuzzy at this point,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, that's a big jump from your kind of 90 proofers up to. But again, I understand like the analogy is that it would be kind of like, with the beer world, it'd be like drinking a light beer and then someone giving you a big like, 15-17% stout, and you're like, oh my God, here's like ton of flavor versus this kind of like very watered down whatever it was you were drinking before. And now you start to really appreciate what that flavor is. And that's always been to me what it is about a lot of higher proof whiskeys. Now, I don't need stuff that's hazmat or in the 130s or whatever. Oftentimes for me, that's too much. I don't enjoy it quite that high a proof.
and
Only
even if
because
you can, it ain't that much of it, right?
yeah, you don't need much of it. But what happens with me is that I find myself focusing oftentimes, not with all of them, but when you have to make a whiskey one dimensional. And for me, what I mean by that is focusing too much on just the heat and not just the overall flavor. To me, that's not the kind of whiskey that I enjoy. So if I'm really kind of like a particular area, might be anywhere from that 110-ish to maybe 125, like maybe getting up there. And honestly, I don't even mind some 100 proofers. I think there's a lot of great whiskeys out there that can be 100 proof, bottle and bonds, that are great sipping whiskeys. So, I don't have to always be kind of like a proof monster or anything like that. But I get it, and I encourage people to buy or try those higher proof whiskeys. And then use a little water. If you don't like it, if you understand kind of the proofing methods a little bit, kind of just add a drop or two of water until you get it to the point where it's more tolerable, and then kind of work your way through it. So
Yeah, I think
um,
that's kind of been my sweet spot is between 110 and 120. That's
mhm.
it's kind of where I end up. Anything too much higher than that, you're not going to have a whole lot of it. Uh, like you're going to be sleeping on the couch. So, and especially this year, I've come across a handful of bottles at 100 proof that I think are really great.
Mhm. Yeah, there can really be, and again, I think that was always kind of the misnomer, is that it has to be really high proof for it to be really good and all of that. Well, I mean, I've had, again, like you, some really good, flavorful, viscous, oily, velvety 100 proof whiskeys that have been significantly better than something that's 120, 125, or even higher. So just judging things based on proof is or age is a kind of a tricky thing nowadays, and I've found, personally, and I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but doing some barrel picks or being a part of it, like, I think the greatest thing to do is, while you're doing them, not know age or proof. Then you're just working off of what it is you enjoy the most, or what the others that you're with are enjoying the most. And and oftentimes there becomes this kind of sweet spot. But for people back in the day, even going back a few years, I think a lot of people always wanted the biggest age and the biggest proof. They identified that was the best, and really it couldn't be any further from the truth. So, but what are kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, doing it blind is a great equalizer.
Yeah.
Um, when I swap samples with my buddies, some of the best times we've had has been, just giving it to them blind, having them guess, what it is. Do they like it? And sometimes you're gonna find something that's really interesting. Like you're gonna expect them to like something and they hate it,
Mhm.
or something that you really wouldn't expect that they would like, and they think it's fantastic. So yeah, yeah, blind's fun.
Yeah, they're really, like you said, it's kind of an equalizer, and it lets you know exactly what it is you enjoy and why, without knowing any of that. So, um, your channel. So, what once you kind of got acclimated with what it was you were enjoying and kind of figured out what it was that you enjoyed and why, um, what was it that made you think of the kind of the next step of, I feel like I want to do, reviews, or just have a channel in general?
Well, I mean, basically, it comes down to this. A couple of years ago, I was rebuilding my basement and I tore out this kitchenette that was here. It was this awful 80s kitchenette. And I built this bar. And, while I'm doing it, I'm watching a lot of Whiskey Tube and, doing some of this, some of that. And then, like, I wonder if I could get on there and, do some whiskey reviews. I'm buying a lot of whiskey. And I think what kind of made it make sense, at least to me, and kind of made me take that leap, Scott, because I'm an introvert by nature.
Yeah,
Being here on a live stream, or even being on YouTube it's out of my comfort zone. But I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. But what
good.
made me take that leap is I got a college age son, and he is a film student
Hmm.
and aspiring video editor. So comes down to, it's sort of a cool father and son project that we work on.
Yeah,
We've kind of come up with a schedule for shooting, and he's kind of honing his skills as an editor, and I think we're both getting something out of it, and it's fun to work on.
yeah. I mean, geez, that's a pretty awesome thing, and to have somebody who's willing and able to do your video editing and all that stuff for you, that's even, I mean, that's a heck of a bonus right there, because that's the worst part of doing what it is we do. So having but again, I think that's cool that you and your son have something that's in common. And I guess the other question is, is he old enough, or has he dabbled in the whiskey game at all yet?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. Okay. All right. Well,
We'll get there in time. Not quite yet.
yeah, that'll be an interesting kind of thing. But again, it's finding whatever those commonalities are for whatever it is you're doing. And he's clearly done a good job with the setup and how you've got everything. So, kudos to him for doing all of those things. So
Yeah, he's got a little bit of talent.
that's good. That's pretty awesome. So let's do this. As far as a kind of a few whiskeys that throughout so far 2024, and again, it doesn't have to necessarily be 24, but what are maybe some of so far this year, some of your maybe kind of favorite whiskeys versus some that you were kind of maybe slightly disappointed in or thought they were going to be good and kind of disappointed you a little bit.
All right, I got two for you.
Yeah.
And right out of the gate, I got one of each, and they're both from the same distillery. First, I've got the Still Austin Bottled and Bond Blue Corn.
Yep.
Freaking love it. It's not like anything I've ever had. It's just got this velvety chocolate mouthfeel that it's unique and it's delicious, and that's what speaks to me.
Yep.
And I had this on the heels of the cask strength bourbon, which to me that's a game changer. A bourbon that dark, that delicious, that's 2 years old, that you can get on the shelves here in my state for $65. That's insane. Okay.
Yep.
However, one that was a big disappointment for me, and I'm probably going to be on an island for this one. It's the Still Austin cask strength rye. Yeah. I hear your reaction, and it's not the first reaction I've got when I said that. And I want to love it so bad, Scott, because going from the cask strength bourbon to the blue corn, this was the bottle that I had to have. I was intent on finding it, and one of my really great friends, Danny, he happened to be out west. He snagged this. He brought it back for me, and he was excited for me to try it. And to me, it's like a mint bomb. It's just that one note. It comes out so hard at me. I can't get around it. And like that mint note you get in some ryes. And sometimes it's like a little nuance. Sometimes it's a little bit more. To me, this is just so much mint, and it kind of ruins it for me.
All right, let me pour. I'm gonna pour it right now and see. It's been a little while since I've gone to it, and it's actually, the more I think about it, I don't know if I even did a review of it or not. But I would say with ryes, and again, I don't know where it falls like in your category of things that you enjoy sipping on, but it did admittedly take me a little while to get into ryes and that profile, and do I like sipping this or versus just cocktails. And now I find myself honestly a lot of the time enjoying more ryes than I do some bourbons, and it's been an interesting kind of shift. But again, I understand the mint or dill factor of ryes, and some of those, one or the other or both, can be kind of off-putting to people. And me, I prefer something that has a little bit more mint, not heavy, like you don't want it super minty, but dill for me in rye is the off-putting note. That's something that I don't enjoy. But all right, I'm gonna, in your honor of not liking this stuff, I'm gonna give it a try and just see if I'm getting a big mint note at all. Yeah, it's there. My first reaction would be for me that it's not like big like you're getting, and again, maybe that's what you're.
It could be that I'm just hypersensitive to that particular note. But my buddies love this, and I want to love it, but it's a mint punch in my face.
Huh. Yeah, I can kind of get what it is you're saying. And I guess how I kind of look at this, it's interesting not having that for a while, and it's weird that I got it sitting there, but I can see what you mean. There is a fair amount of mint on this one, more than I kind of remember it having.
But I think I was just expecting it to be a little bit more of that dark note, that dark deep layer of flavor like I was getting in the cask strength bourbon, and I really haven't gotten that yet. Maybe I just need to let it open up. I don't know.
Yeah, mine is, and I think they're probably maybe all the same. I don't know. Mine's 116 proof, but um, I would say it drinks a little lighter than 116, kind of. But the one thing I would say, kind of about that was, there is again those mint notes, a little bit of like kind of some chocolate, maybe a little bit of fruity notes, but the one thing with this that I'm kind of finding is that the finish really kind of falls off fairly quickly. So oftentimes at 116, you wouldn't really expect that, but you are having to search a little bit on this one. But the one thing that I would say when I start getting kind of those candied mint notes, which I prefer to have with more of those kind of like heavier fruit or chocolate notes on some of the older ryes with maybe a little more of a spicy kind of backbone. I'm not quite getting that with this. It does feel slightly flat a little bit. So yeah, it may not be the greatest thing that to go to. But for you, it's the mint note that's off-putting for you though.
Yeah, that's what does it for me, and for some reason I can't get around it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It can be that. There are a lot of those particular notes that people just don't like in a whiskey. Mint, pepper, fruit, chocolate, whatever, coffee beans, all of those kinds of things. So I know there can be a lot of off-putting things. So, but I do agree with you 100% on a blue corn. And I would say this about Still Austin in general. And I think who was it before? Maybe I don't know if it was I don't know if maybe it was Mark or something or Hophead. Yeah, I can't remember who it was that said it, but someone said something about what it is that Still Austin is doing with their whiskeys at such a young age, but to still get a lot of great profiles out of them. I'll give them a lot of credit for being able to create that kind of whiskey with those heavier kind of profiles that you're not getting really or much, or, well, I'll say much youth on it. You're getting a very much more developed whiskey at a really young age. And to me, it's probably what's made Still Austin maybe the most approachable to the masses Texas whiskey of all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just think it's insane that they can do that type of a product in 2 years. And if you think about it, that's going to put them at a pretty significant advantage as far as reacting to, you
I think your mic might have just died. Something happened. We lost the audio. But yeah, like Todd says, I don't know, Todd. I don't know if the blue corn is that old. Is it a bottle and bond? Yeah, I believe it actually is. So maybe it is closer to 5. So, but
we
there you
good?
go. I hear you now. Yep,
All
you're
right.
good.
Sorry about that.
See, man, it does it. It helps having your audio video guy close. I'll
Yeah,
tell you.
my crew stepped in.
And out of panic, I'd have been like, hell, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna have to like shut this thing down. So, but yeah, that's good. But kudos to the young jerk. So let's see. All right, so let's do this. One that I was kind of one that I wasn't like overly crazy about, and one that I was pretty kind of excited about. A couple of different ones. This is on a kind of a small scale. I'll say impressed with the new rye from Green River. I was, even with it being, what is it, 95 proof, I think. 95 proof. I felt that this thing for $30 or whatever it was really kind of packed a pretty good little punch, and I was excited to see them introduce this to their regular standard bourbon and weeded to kind of like that lineup. So once they released this, boy, I also feel like maybe when they get into releasing these at cast strength, if it's something that they end up doing, I think will end up being a really, really nice whiskey overall. Love the profile. Had a lot going on even for a 95 proofer. And then disappointment. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a disappointment, but it was the newest release this year of the ECBP, and I guess the issue was I don't get too hung up on the ages, because even with this one being 10 years, 9 months, with the blend, that's the youngest whiskey in there. Now, even if there was a lot of that, that's still a nice age on a bourbon. So
Right.
to call it young, I mean, this is just where the all of us within the kind of whiskey sphere get a little jaded with the Elijah Craig Barrel
Yeah,
Proof.
that's us being spoiled. I mean,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
knew
it's
coming off of last year's, what, the C923, that it wasn't
yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
that. So I didn't think it was bad. I kinda liked it.
No, and here's what I would say. It wasn't that I didn't like it, and I would tell anybody anytime you see them that they're really always a buy. Like, it's always going to be a great whiskey. The one thing was that that was kind of lacking for me was just a little bit of that richness, and it started to feel a little bit more like the B batch from last year, where it was a little bit more not oak, because I don't mind oak in a bourbon, but I don't like it when it starts to get a little bit drying. And to me, that's when it feels a little more like tannic and off-putting. So again, this is probably me just being judgy coming off the C batch from last year. And I poured a little bit because what I wanted to do was just go back to it a little bit and see if a little bit of airtime um, had kind of changed it. So let me just take a quick little sip here, and just kind of get a little idea of how this thing is maybe developed, hopefully a little bit.
Yeah, to me, it just seemed like it was just more muted. All of the classic ECBP flavors are there. They're just not as pronounced. They're just a little dialed back.
Yeah. And for me with this one, it does feel, I'll say, like trying to think back, the mouthfeel I think is nice, pretty creamy, little more peanut driven than I typically like with the Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs. If they're more fruity, I prefer that. This is a little bit more peanutty than I enjoy. So I'd almost have to go back and probably watch my video on how I kind of talked about it then to figure out where it's at a little bit now. But I guess I would say for anybody who either has or hasn't had the A124, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, if you don't mind something that has a little bit of that kind of peanutty type of flavor that oftentimes Heaven Hill can be kind of known for, it does have that. And whatever you do, don't compare this to the C batch from last year. There's not going to be a lot of things, honestly, maybe even going forward, that are going to beat that bottle. That was a
Yeah, it was
pretty
pretty
good bottle.
special.
Yeah, that was a pretty special one. So, it's still a good one. It's still a great buy. I mean, 10-year, 9-month bourbon for $75. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's a great value,
yeah, it is.
regardless.
It is. It really is. So I like it. It's just not something I would necessarily want to maybe kind of gravitate towards. So, all right, what else? What else you got that were maybe a favorite, or one that you were enjoying versus one that's maybe a slightly disappointing for you?
All right, how about this? This is one that kind of knocked me, or kind of blew me away, rather.
Mm.
Middle West Spirits,
Hmm.
the Pumpernickel Rye.
Hmm.
You had this one yet?
I have. It's actually fantastic.
Yeah. First time I tried anything from Middle West. And my friend got me a bottle of this. It's a pick from Barrels for Hope,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's just killer. It's again, it's unique and it's delicious, which is what I'm looking for in experience. And to me, this was like blueberry maple syrup over pancakes or something bizarre. It's just wild.
It's a very surprising and interesting profile that when you hear it out loud when someone
Sounds
says
weird.
it. Yeah, it sounds like there's no way that can be good. And that was my experience like very early on. This is maybe going back 2-3 years ago when I first tried it. I had never even heard of him at this point. And he said he had a pumpernickel rye. I'm like, what in God's earth is this thing? And I tried it and was like immediately, it was not what I was expecting at all. It was a flavor bomb. Absolutely loved it. Don't necessarily remember the profile of it, but I remember enjoying it a lot. And shameless plug, we'll be down in Columbus in June doing a pick doing a pick there. But
Nice, nice.
we're looking forward to it. But again, I am 100% on board with that choice right there. All right, what else you got? What's something that's kind of a little bummer for you?
Oh, let's see. Here's one. Give me a second.
All right.
All right. And this isn't going to be something that I disliked. It's going to be something I wasn't as happy with as I thought I might have been. And it's going to be back to Ohio. This Whiskey War barrel proof.
Okay.
And I want to say that Jason had him on as a judge early on for the Glendageddon competition. And listening to the story, I was really kind of drawn in. I'm like, man, I got to try something from these guys. And I think what I had wanted was that double oaked. But I couldn't remember that when I was at the store. I think they only just had this one. I'm like, well, I remembered I wanted to try something from them. So give me that. And I brought it home. It's got excellent nose on it, but the palate just kind of isn't there for me. It's not bad. It's just I don't love it as much as I like a lot of the bottles I picked up so far this year.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I mean, there can be, I think, by nature, I think a lot of us probably fall into the category of really wanting to like something, to not just maybe want to give it the benefit of the doubt, but really sometimes at the end of the day, there are things that just don't end up, working that well, and that's perfectly fine, so it's
it's not bad by any stretch. It's just not not what I was hoping for, and I still want to search out that double oak.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and some of those double or double oaks, man, they can be absolutely fantastic with what those profiles can actually be. So, all right. So let me see. For me, a couple of things. One was a surprise, and this was a toasted rye from Hughes Brothers. I just actually tried it not that long ago and absolutely enjoyed the heck out of it. I believe this is almost 7-year-old rye in a toasted barrel. But what it is that Hughes Brothers is doing and what Cyrus has got over there whiskey wise, he's doing some great things in addition to their bourbons. I mean, he's got some older cast strength bourbon that's absolutely fantastic. But if you can find something, I would say from Hughes Brothers in general, check them out, give it a try. I think it's both their bourbon and rye have very appealing profiles, I think, to a lot of people. Now,
so hey Scott, let me pause you right there. Is that a bottle you're picking up at a store, or are you picking up these guys online? I don't think.
So these are they're gonna basically be local on the East Coast in a few places, but is mostly gonna be kind of online. Now, admittedly, it's not as easy to find, but there are places you can go. I know Sealbox, I believe, has this or other things. So, again, I know the argument of a bottle that's maybe whatever, $50 and $20 may put it over the top for, shipping and stuff. But again, aside from the monetary side of things, I think it's a really nice bottle of whiskey for what it is. I think he's doing a fantastic job. And I know with the expansion he's got going on, he's trying to get more of that in this release to be more kind of mainstream and get out there. Not quite there yet, but hopefully it'll be something that's a little more readily available before too much longer. So I'm trying to think.
Uh-oh, he cut out. Wait, that's on the
Knows with the things, the expansion he's got going on, he's trying to get more of that in this release to be more kind of mainstream and get out there. Not quite there yet, but hopefully it'll be something that's a little more readily available before too much longer. So I'm trying to think.
Oh, you gotta. Wait, that's on.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, he did cut out.
Can you guys know?
Is your mic muted?
No. Is it? Can you hear me? I think my mic.
Good now.
Yeah, mine might have died before. So let me plug this.
Oh.
back in.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yep, I can hear you. I can hear you good. So
Okay.
no, sorry about that. Yep. So
I
I was
assume that was me.
yeah, no, it was I was hearing me but in your thing, but I was because my mic apparently died. But I would say one other one, and again, this is something kind of up and coming a little bit, the fiddler from ASW. This is the soloist. And again, maybe something that's not quite mainstream yet, but I think you're going to start to find and see much more stuff from ASW out of Atlanta, Georgia. I think a lot of people have really started kind of getting behind what it is they're doing and starting to really appreciate those flavor profiles. Again, smaller company, great whiskey, all of those things. So again, I would say if you see some things, and again, they do a lot of different things. So with one of their kind of head distillers down there does some absolutely amazing things. So if you see something from ASW, I would highly encourage you guys to kind of check them out. So
Are you going to do another pick from them this year?
we already did it, and it's coming probably in the next two weeks. We were supposed to have something this coming week, but we're not going to end up. The bottles didn't show up, and it was actually supposed to be the ASW, so that could be the following Friday. So we've got a couple things from them coming, but we're really looking forward to releasing those. So
Nice.
what else you got?
All right,
Anything else?
How about these? Now these I didn't know what to expect at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure anybody did. But how about Evernorth? We went to the grand opening last month, picked up whatever we could, and we've got the honey finished bourbon and the pear brandy barrel finished bourbon. And I think they're both outstanding, and I'm so glad that they turned out so good. I'm assuming you probably watch the Bourbon Junkies and have kind of followed how they've kind of taken off on this journey into their own business and their own.
I'm not familiar with those guys. Can you
never heard of them?
No, never heard of them. That, like a new small channel or something? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, they're catching on.
I'll check them out.
But no, these are both really good, Scott.
Cool. Yeah, and I think I saw you did like a video on those. That kind of looked like a cool thing. And again, you got to give them a lot of credit for kind of going down that path. That's a very in today's day and age, it's a very difficult thing to have to do. And I'm sure they're probably spreading themselves pretty thin, but kind of knowing Dan and Sean, they're going to want to push. I mean, they're coming at it from a slightly different perspective. They're coming at it from the perspective of what we all want and what we feel that others want in whiskeys, so they can be a little more particular with what it is they're putting out. So I think that gives them a slight edge in that kind of detail of those kind of whiskeys. So they're really making it for themselves, knowing that a lot of other people are probably going to enjoy something similar to what it is that they're enjoying. And again, Dan and Sean, I mean, they'll probably admit it. I mean, they have slightly different palates, which works really well. I mean, same thing with Jason and I. There are things that work really well, and then kind of allow you to shift gears a little bit to kind of maybe think outside the box. And you can tell with them, they oftentimes will do the same type of thing. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that they've got a couple of other really good bottles of whiskey. So
What I thought was
kudos to
cool
them.
is that these aren't exactly like your typical finishes. This is, kind of a bit of a risk for something
Yeah,
that you're gonna put out right out of the gate, and,
yep,
you nailed it. So, yeah,
yeah.
these are great.
Yeah, it's a tough. I mean, it's a very tough thing, and again, like those finishes, again with a finished whiskey, you never know. It's always a big risk, and with what it is they do, and overall, like the limited amount of barrels that they have, in comparison to some other people, or other distilleries, that's a pretty good risk to take because if it doesn't
Yeah, I
turn,
agree. I mean,
yeah, if
if
it
you
doesn't
mess it
turn
up
out,
and
you're in
that's
trouble.
after stock, what do you do?
Yeah, you're in trouble a little bit if it doesn't turn out how you think it's going to or how you want it to be. I mean, I'm sure you don't just get rid of it. You'll figure out something else to do. But again, it's a little bit of a gamble. So, but like I said, kudos to them. So, um, here's a couple of other things. This was a little bit of a hit and miss thing, and I think for me it's more of an improvement. This is a sample. I got it from the distillery through Heaven Hill, but this was that Bernheim wheat whiskey that they released, and this is the newest batch. This is the A224, and I wasn't sure how this was going to be because admittedly I wasn't a huge fan of the two batches that they released last year, and was starting to kind of fall into that category of, is this just like larceny all over again? Now, I know the mash bills are different. I'm not necessarily comparing the two, but how larceny came out and their first batches were just, it felt like not very good. And now that they've kind of gotten a little bit further into their batch releases, it's starting to feel a little bit more kind of improved. And I think with what they did with this, and I think the ages on this were between 7 and 9 years old, 51% wheat and whatever the other 49% grains were. Actually, I think that's what it was. 51. I'd have to check and see. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows in the chat, but I think it's either 51 or 60, one of the two. And I can't remember what it is as far as the wheat content, but it drank much more like a nice rich bourbon than it did like even a wheated bourbon. There was just more richness and complexity, far more fruit, a lot of like kind of malty chocolate type of note. So it was something I was surprised that I liked it as much as I did. I was trying to convince myself that I wasn't crazy about it, but then I just said, well, I can like this because other people don't like it doesn't mean that I can't like it. And I was kind of digging that.
So you
So
think they're starting to dial it in? Is that kind of what you're
I,
saying?
I do, and I think part of it is through what a lot of us do and people tasting things. I think they get and use the feedback as their we're kind of like their test dummies a little bit, and I think they hear what it is we do and what we say, and I think they try to make those improvements. So as they're tasting through and creating these new batches, again, I think they're using us as the test market for improving these batches. And in my opinion, it's the best one that they've done. And at $65, I'd say if you can find it or see it, you want something that has a slightly different kind of profile. To me, in a good way, I'd give the Bernheim, the A224 a shot for $65. I think it's a pretty darn good whiskey. So
For some reason, I haven't been able to find that one around here. We can find Larceny and the Elijah Craig barrel proofs pretty consistently. Not always the batch that we're looking for,
yeah,
but for some reason, that Bernheim just doesn't seem to make it up here.
you know what? I'm not exactly sure what the full distribution is. I know this is slightly different. I think this is a twice a year release. I think it's going to be February, and then I don't know, like July
August.
or August. Yeah, August, maybe something like that, as far as what they're, or maybe September. Maybe it's February and September or something like that. But yeah, they're going to release these twice a year.
Then they've got like a dialed down version It's about like what, 90 proof or something?
Yeah, I mean they've got what is the one that's kind of less than this? Yeah, it's still the same thing, still the Bernheim, but yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it's 100 proof, but don't quote me on
Yeah,
that.
you see that one I can find, but I can't find the barrel proof one.
Danny, looks like Danny will hook you up again.
Ah, he's
So,
the man.
yeah, it's just interesting. And again, I don't know if Danny's had it or not, but I'm always interested to hear kind of people's perspective on some of these things that are, I'm going to say off profile, meaning that they're different than what a lot of us kind of typically drink with, bourbons and ryes and things along those lines. But um, I'll give you one more, and then I'll give you a couple more, and we can kind of wrap things up a little bit. But as far as another one, and this is maybe company wise overall, but what it is that kind of for me, Ben Holiday is doing both their really the Rick House proof, and if you can get their single barrels, no matter where they have. I've only had one single barrel before, and it was really absolutely fantastic. But I think both Rick House proofs, the regular standard rye based and wheated, are both good. I prefer the regular more than the wheated, but again, that was just kind of my palate. But I would say if you can find something from Ben Holiday, I think it's going to probably surprise you, like to me, in a very good way. Have you had anything from Ben
Just
Holiday?
just this one. This is the Rickhouse Proof, 6-year small batch. I think it's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah,
Um, and what I really like on it is the stats on the bottle. It reads like the
yeah,
back of a baseball card.
yeah, yeah. Their transparency is probably second to none for the most part. I mean, they give you everything, and it's really cool how they kind of limit everything to um, basically 1 through 7 or 7 through 1, depending on your bottle, how they have it labeled.
Mhm.
And really, what we just found out when we were down there not long ago, uh, they're not pulling really anything within these blends out of Rick 7 or 6. So really, everything we're getting is all 1 through 5 at this point. I think they were going to be doing something. I don't want to say experimental, but I think they're saving those for some other things. So we're getting everything floors 5 through 1 right now. But again, if you guys are unfamiliar, like Tom was saying before, on the side of the bottle, they are giving you actual percentages of barrels from each floor. So what I like about this is it gives you a really good idea. If you're tracking down bottles, what is it about that profile that you like? And maybe you can kind of gear it towards whatever more barrels or percentages of those barrels are coming from each floor. So mine was what is this? What release was this one? Let's see. Mine's or actually, mine is bottled August 18th, 2023. It was a fall 2016 um, barrel entry.
All right, yeah, mine's August 17th, so it's probably very, very similar. And I thought it
Yeah,
was just really well-rounded, well-balanced, like
I
classic
couldn't
coffee.
couldn't couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. All right, is there anything else that you like that one? Is there any other one that you can think of off the top of your head that was a little either underwhelming or disappointing to you?
Disappointing, I wouldn't say. I think just those two so far this year that were kind of a bit of a letdown.
Yeah,
But I'll give you one more that I thought was really good, Scott.
yeah, yeah.
The new Riff 8.
Okay, interesting.
You're talking about bottles that are 100 proof that are still going to give you a full experience.
Hmm.
And I think this is really good. Um, I've been a fan of New Riff since we've been able to get them up here in Michigan, especially with the rise.
Hmm.
But this is a really good higher age stated bourbon. It's um,
I've heard a lot of great things about it, and it's again to your point, for a lot of people, I think they're really appreciating that 8 year, at 100 proof. And if they're doing it right, again, it doesn't have to be a proof monster. It can still be an absolutely fantastic whiskey at 100 proof. And for you and like a lot of others, I think that's a perfect example of that.
and especially if this is gonna be part of their core range and it's gonna stay at that price point of like $67 or whatever, then it's
Mhm.
it's just an excellent value.
Yeah, and that's some pretty old stuff. That must be pretty close to some of their first stuff that they
Yeah,
were
I think they opened in
releasing.
14, so yeah, I mean, it's gotta be.
Yeah, yeah, it must be. So I mean, it's kind of cool that they're releasing that. And for me, admittedly, it was like early on. I tried some of the new riff stuff, wasn't overly crazy about it, and maybe it had something to do with just the age or whatever it was, just didn't work for me. And I never found myself going back. But again, a lot of other people have really tried, really tried a lot of great things. So let me answer Wade's question here. So without rattling off a lot of just great whiskeys that I've had, we kind of touched upon it before. Tom had mentioned their blue corn. And for me, again, I'm really digging the profiles on, I'll say, the vast majority of what it is that Still Austin is doing. Now, a couple that I had, I do have the 100 proof one, that Bottle and Bond rye that they just released. I will say this. I think when you start getting at 100 and a little bit more proof for Still Austin, that's when those really, to me, start to shine. The other rye that I had was, I don't know, I want to say like low 90s, and just kind of started to fall a bit flat. Again, I'm talking about this from a sipping standpoint, and maybe wanting a little bit more proof. That was a little bit late for me. That 90, oh, I wish I could uh, find where I had that one. But yeah, it just kind of, it was good, but kind of fell a little bit flat, like we were talking before. So, but again, huge fan of what it is Still Austin is doing in general, and they're, again, probably the Texas whiskey brand that I talk about the most, just because I love that profile. Now, one other one I'll say about Texas whiskeys that I think are really approachable too, without having that big cinder or big bold char flavor that to me is very off-putting. Some Rebecca Creek stuff has been pretty fantastic. So I think what they're doing has been great. Not a Balcones or Balcones, whatever whatever the pronunciation is of it. Not a fan of that. Not a fan of a lot of the Texas whiskeys because it's so oak and kind of heavy char forward, and that's just off-putting for me, and a bit herbal oftentimes, like in a off-putting way. So I'll leave it at that. But let me ask you this about the channel. We'll kind of wrap things up a little bit. So what are you kind of looking to kind of expand upon? What do you want to kind of dive into with the channel now and kind of going forward?
Well, I think what we found recently is being consistent, and that means staying on schedule. You know, you find a certain day that works to shoot, and then we try to do at least one short every week. And these are going to be the knee jerk reactions, where I give a quick reaction to a bottle I just got or a
Mhm.
sample I just got. And on top of that, you know, about two 5 to 10 minute videos a month. And that's going to kind of be what we are able to do for the time being,
Mhm.
based on our schedules. I will say this: we just hit 1,000 subscribers a week and a half ago, and I'm
Congrats.
going to do some sort of a giveaway here real soon. So watch out for that. Um, but yeah, I think what we're doing, Scott, you probably figured this out early on, is you kind of figure out when is the best time to drop a video, when is the
Mhm.
best time to drop a short, because you know things hit the algorithm,
Oh yeah,
and if you drop it on the wrong day, you might think you made a great video and no one watched it,
yeah.
and then you know you put something out that you thought maybe wasn't quite as good, and you know gets thousands of views. It's just there's a science to it. We're still trying to figure what that science is, I guess.
You're gonna drive yourself crazy trying to figure that thing out. Let me tell you that. So it is, there are exactly that. There are the ones you think, man, this is gonna be a really good video, and it falls flat, and then there's other ones you feel like you whip through and you just put it out there, and you're like, lo and behold, you're like, I don't know how this thing's doing as well as it is, but somehow it does much
Yeah, it's
better
funny.
than the other.
We're trying to figure that out, I guess. But I guess to your point, you know, just trying to build a little bit of a following and make some good connections. And so that's really big thanks to you for inviting me on this evening. I had a great time.
Absolutely. I'm glad you could be on and kind of just share a little bit of, about your channel, a little bit of the backstory and all of that. To me, that's important and gives a little more insight. There are a lot of whiskey channels that are out there these days, and everyone's doing their own thing, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. But the nice part is that there are people out there that like each one of those channels for whatever particular reasons, and that's really the best part. So I mean, if you find someone you really enjoy their content and what it is they do and their kind of approach to things, then that's what it is. But I think really at the end of the day, you just have to be you still have to have fun, when it's no longer fun and just feels like a job all the time and you dread doing what it is you're doing.
It's going to be something that I want to put something out that I would want to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you still have to do, I mean, that's the thing, like anything that you do, you have to put out with the thought in your mind that not one person necessarily will watch this, but you enjoy either the whiskey or just doing that in general. So, and having fun. When you get so caught up in all of the numbers, I don't know. It's not something I really focus on that much. I mean, I enjoy doing these kinds of things. I enjoy, meeting the people and all these different kind of events and things along those lines. So that stuff to me is more important than numbers, because without anybody who watches those things, whether it's, 100 people or 100,000, oftentimes there's an overlap of all these people. And when you get a chance and an opportunity to meet and talk with a lot of these people, you really kind of find out that they're the same as all of us, and they love whiskey as much as we all do. So whether, again, they've got 100,000 or 100, I don't know. It's irrelevant from that standpoint. Now, there are other factors that play into things. But again, at the end of the day, the best part is have fun with it. Enjoy doing things with your son, all of those kinds of things. That's what it's all about. And it's the community that really continues to drive really everything that it is that at least I do, and hopefully some things that you do. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So with that being said, so where can people find you, subscribe to you, all of that, and we'll call it an evening.
I don't know if you could throw a link on there or not, but we're just the Bourbon Jerk on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram, same name. I don't really Instagram very well, kind of learning that as I go. We're also on TikTok, which again, I'm kind of fumbling around on.
It doesn't even sound like it's going to be a thing much longer in the United States. I don't know if TikTok's going to stick around or something.
TikTok's a different animal. It really is. We had some fun on there. I've met some cool people on that app. But yeah, who knows? It might not be here in a couple.
Yeah, I know nothing. I know nothing about TikTok or any of that stuff, so I can't help you in that category. All right, here, Marty threw up a link. So guys,
I appreciate that, Marty.
If you haven't subscribed to the Bourbon Jerk, do yourself a favor and make sure you subscribe. He does a great job with his content, and I think again it's a good, fun. I'll say this in a good way, a simple approach. You make it enjoyable, you make it kind of fun, and people can kind of follow along to really what it is the information you're giving about the whiskey. So I think that's an important thing in my mind, is keep it simple for the most part. So, but I'll leave that up. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Again, that hour went by super quick. It really goes by really, really fast. So, but thanks, Tom. I appreciate you joining tonight and kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and the channel. Like I said, if you guys haven't subscribed to the Bourbon Jerk, make sure you do that. That'll help them out and trigger that algorithm for them. Get them blow it up for them.
Well, hey, Scott, I really appreciate that, and I'm kind of looking at the names of the people that are following in chat, and appreciate my buddies. You know who you are. for sticking around and watching. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everything. And yeah, so in about maybe a half hour for anybody part of the Patreon community, Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, I'll be doing another kind of Patreon only live over there in about 30 minutes. So look for the link to kind of pop up there, give you guys some updates on some things going. But overall, thanks everybody for joining again another Tuesday night. We'll be back with something. I'm not sure exactly yet what for next Tuesday, but we'll hit you with something else. So thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody joining again. Like I say, remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers, guys. Have a great Tuesday night and great rest of your week. We'll talk later. Cheers.
Cheers.